It affects your personality. And now we're going to look at, we're going to begin looking at cultural determinants. And cultural determinants are interesting. Interesting aspects of personality development because I think I'm running a little bit late. Development of personality, cultural determinants. So we're going to look at three different aspects of cultural determinants. What is it in culture that determines the development of your personality? There's three. The three are cultural variations. So as you cross between cultures, there's variations in personality depending on what culture you're in. Okay? So we're going to look at that. Culture and personality and social class differences, which sometimes are similar in different cultures, but are still a matter of variation. So first of all, we'll define culture. Every person lives in a society made up of different people. In addition, these societies are different themselves. So even if you live within the Thai culture, for instance, there's still different aspects of Thai culture. Say, for instance, between the South and the North, there's even variations in the language. So if you, I hear people talking about Pasandura and Pasaisan. It's a little different, but basically it's still the same language. It's still the Thai language. But these differences are referred to as ethnicity. There's difference in the lifestyle of people and the way they think, feel, the food they eat is different in kind of small ways, but sometimes big ways. This is differences within the culture, different societies within the culture. They have different experiences of past history, and stories of the past influence the identities of the members. So even when you come to Nalesa 1, if there's people that have come more from the east or from the south or from the north, they may express different ideas, and I know they do, and different ideas in the language, the way they use the language. These stories, the stories of the culture, within each one of these ethnic groups, present characteristic ways of thinking, feeling, attitudes, goals, and ideals. These are the same ideas that separate Thai culture from other cultures in the world. Ways of thinking about things. So a lot of this is captured in the language. I can give you one example. Whenever you're counting something in the Thai language, you always say, like you want to count books, you'll say books, some limbs. So you're saying, what you're saying is you're identifying the noun, books, and then you count it by saying 3 and a classifier. And this is quite different. It's very, very different than English. We say 3 books. So when you're thinking like this, you know from learning English already that you have to not only learn it, you have to change your thinking process. So this is because of the different ways of thinking. And there's more than one, a lot of these. These are cultural aspects Culture has several meanings. To cultivate, this comes from the word cultivate. To cultivate is to change or adapt to some aspect of experience. So all of the people, all the time people have cultivated a certain preference to certain values and ideas. A cultured person is one who is refined to the delicacies of life, educated and aware of the finest things available. This also refers to a set of shared attitudes, values, what is important, goals, things that you work for. Generally, in one culture, you would have people who value the same thing, set their goals the same way, and practices that characterize an institution, organization, or group. So all of these things are similar within the culture, but different between cultures. One of the ideas, this is not in your book, but they may mention it, mythology. Mythology are stories, ancient stories, old stories of the way that the people in the society and in the culture overcame obstacles and won battles and wars, and how they persevered through time up until now. And these values have decided the aspects and the context of the culture. These stories often have a hero and a heroine. A hero, hero, heroine, that's just a female hero. A male is a hero, heroine is a female hero. There's a conflict. There's always a conflict. Like I remember the movie that came out about Alice in Wonderland and how they had to fight with Burma. So this is mythological in many ways because it's greater than human ability. It's almost like Superman or something. There's a battle. There's a bad people, bad group, the villain, and then there's the winning the conflict. Magical and you can see the picture at the bottom. There's the Western types of mythology, often talk about the gods and lived in the skies, and how they fought and dealt and lived day by day with the interaction of men on Earth. So this is common. The stories are different, but the idea that these stories exist similarly exist in every culture. Chinese culture, Japanese culture, Thai culture, American culture, Western culture. The one story that we can talk about a little bit, just to give you an idea, is the Trojan War, which happened in 1200 BC. So that was like 3,200 years ago or more. And the Trojans kidnapped the queen, which is the same thing that happened, I think, from Burma, right? Didn't they capture the Thai queen? Didn't they kidnap the Thai queen or something? Greek soldiers led by Odysseus fought a war against the Trojans to get her back. So the Trojans went all the way to get the queen back. Odysseus fought against the Trojans. The Trojans were in Troy, and they had the queen of the Greek soldiers, and they fought for 7 years. How long did the war go on between Burma and Palestine? How many years? EP. 2 years is all.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, well this is a real war, and this is the one we're talking about in Thailand was a real war. This is not a real war. Nobody knows for sure because they didn't write books back then, 3,000 years ago. They told these stories by word of mouth only. So the way they won the war was they built a giant horse, and then they left it hollow inside, and all the soldiers went up in the horse, and they left, and they said goodbye, you can have this horse. We leave this for you because your army is so strong and so good that we can't beat you. So they went outside and they looked at the horse and they brought the horse inside their fort, inside, and then the soldiers came out at night and defeated the Trojans. And this is what kind of the idea. So the soldiers got inside and they moved it inside. And so it's really, it's not a real story. People believe that maybe it really happened. The details are not true. So the soldiers went in, burned the city, rescued the queen, and this story stayed to be a hero story, a myth that they still tell, and the kids in school still read this story. At least I think they do. We did. I did when I was a young kid. I did in school read this story. These are stories that exist in every culture. They serve as a purpose for forming the identity of the culture. And they give personalities and persons these characteristics, which are super characteristics and worthy of admiration. And these stories form the ideas in our minds of who we are, who we want to be, and the good and highest level of our culture and our society. So I think there's more stories in Thailand about things that happen, mythological stories that aren't true, maybe. Animals that turn into people, people into animals, or something, and win the heart of a princess or something like that. Aisha, when you think about these stories, if you're in any exercise and reading about them, you should pay attention to them because they give you kind of the personality of the culture. And usually I give the students an assignment right here, but we're not going to do that this time around. We're going to go on through the material. But it's mentioned in the book about mythology, and you should make a note about it. Okay, so we're going to continue into the cultural determinants of personality. Early development, when children are very young, change takes place quickly and rapidly in a very short period of time. So the baby, the infant, is growing quickly. It doubles its size, it doubles the brain size, it doubles the size of the heart, the size of the body, and everything quickly, which means that this changes are going on quicker than it ever will in its life. They learn how to adjust to their environment, even at very, very early ages, and what is expected of them by their parents and their learning relationship with their family and extended family and friends and social contact. However, an infant, you must remember that the basic child care is the mother and then the father and the rest of the family. Rarely do strangers have significant influence on really young children. They understand approval and disapproval very, very early. If the mother's happy, they know it, and if the mother is unhappy, they know that also. So by the mother, by having this relationship with the child, establishes certain early behavior patterns in terms of expectations from the child. Behavior that is rewarded is repeated. So if the baby behaves in such a way that the mother says, oh, very good, then the baby will do that, again, more likely. But if the mother does not like it and says, no, but turns away and moves away from the child won't do that. It's called reward and approval versus punishment and disapproval. So the relationship exists between the child, whether the child is beginning to learn and beginning its nurture and social relationships very early in life. So, as you might have guessed, and if you've read the assignment, you know that culture is learned. It's not, you can't inherit culture. It comes to you through the relationship that you have with your family and with the world and your environment. So disapproval and punishment. All these things, all of these looks have an emotional context. And if you're an HRM, you're going to take emotion and health and stress in another course. But these looks and these basic babies know them. They learn them quickly. And you know if somebody's looking at you and looking nicely at you or looking not nicely, you know it. And this is would be an example of punishment or disapproval. So in a way, disapproval is a form of punishment. If the parent, who is the sole source of goodness in the world, disapproves of the child will feel very threatened and want to please the parent. The child always wants to please the parent. Okay, so this is the first concept you should realize is the concept about reward and punishment and how this shapes behavior. And how this is the first ideas of learning cultural acceptance. Cultural variations and diversity. So you should find these titles of these slides in the book also. This should be written exactly the same way as they are on these slides. Society exists within the culture. So you have the culture is a big concept, it's a superordinate concept, and society is a concept that exists within the culture. So it's a kind of smaller idea. For instance, breastfeeding, where the mother, this is a natural, normal process, but it's different. It's a variation, which means some countries do this different. Some cultures behave differently, and different behaviors associated with breastfeeding. In America, it might be a few months. So 5-6 months, sometimes less, and then the baby is given a bottle. But in other countries, it can be up to 5 or 6 years. A child can be 5 or 6 years old, and there's even some more variations on this, where the child can be much older, but not 20 years old, okay? But breastfeeding, what happened here? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I went ahead of one slide. Within your culture, the culture expresses certain characteristics that all members of the society are expected to learn. Some problems are considered universal, however. So universal is common in every society. So these universals are child care and feeding. This is listed in your book. You may get an activity to create a chart or a table to define and show all these universals. Toilet training, learning how to use a toilet. You got to learn. It doesn't come natural, or it could come natural, but you can imagine, you know, to live in a society, you have to learn how, and you have to learn how pretty early. What do you think, about 2 years old, I think, or something like that? About 2 years? If you got brothers or sisters at home, you know. Well, this is different in different cultures, how they do this, and when it happens. But it happens in every culture. Everybody in this room has to learn how, but you can't remember, can you? That's an interesting idea. We'll talk about that in some of the theories coming into. Protection from illness, cleanliness, control of sexual and aggressive impulses. You are taught through your culture how to relate to the opposite sex. And liberation from parental dependence. Now, everybody has to go through this. You just within the last couple of years, you have been through an experience, a developmental experience when you came to NU to learn for your education. You separated for the first time in your life from your parents. Chamdamai? Day one, Chamdamai?
Yes.
You can't. Yakmai? Long high fall. No, I didn't cry. Man, Paul, high fall. It's happy. It's a happy occasion because my children grow up, but it's also sad. It's sad because you have to go out on your own. You cannot remember if you cried or not. Some people would. Some people want to cry, but they can't because everybody's looking. Never mind. This is normal. This is natural. If you don't have those feelings, then it's a problem. You should have these feelings. But you're separating from your parents. This is the normal thing in every culture, except maybe cultures that aren't very sophisticated. So you have to get to a point where you become your own master of your own life, making your own decisions. To do this, you separate. These are called universals. They happen to every person in every culture, not the same way, but the same thing happens. And they are child care, toilet training, protection from illnesses. So this is, protection from illnesses basically is being clean, learning hygiene, things of that nature. Control of sexual and aggressive impulses. You learn these things. It's taught to you and expected of you, even if you can't remember learning it. And liberation from parental dependence, depending on your parents. Okay, so we'll take one at a time. Breastfeeding. Some people can go, some cultures can go 5 to 6 years. Some people it's not accepted. What's the accepted year to stop breastfeeding in Thailand?
2 years.
1 year, 2 years? 3 years? About 3? You see, that's pretty much in the middle. What do you think happened, the difference in the child, the effect on the child, if they stop breastfeeding early, say at 3 months, or they stop in 3 years? What's the difference? What effect would that have on the child? What might? Now, every child is different. Remember, some children have a high arousal level, some children have social, okay, what? Say again? Oh, yeah, sure.
The difference is
Is anybody embarrassed about talking about this?
the difference is all of them. If you for the 3 months, they just receive some development form just less than 3 years.
Less than 3 years. So if a baby nurses with the mother for 3 years, what will happen to the baby? What do you think? What's the difference? I've got 2 babies. One here that nursed with the mother for 3 months, and one for 3 years.
The relationship with the
mother is different.
Yes.
What's the difference?
3 months, I think, I'm saying, the differences of the nurses, the mother will give, they want the milk, they will just maybe cry sometimes.
Sure. But say, what I really want to ask you, what's the difference in the person when they get to be 20 years old? When they go to college, 21 years old. So I got one person here, 21 years old, but when they were babies, they nursed with the mother for 3 months and over here for 3 years. What do you think might be the difference? Maybe. There's many things that affect personality. But what is one thing that could be different by just thinking about about breastfeeding? Everything okay? Okay.
The relationship.
So you can say again. Okay, let's just follow this logic through a little bit. If a child depends on the mother for 3 years, during this time they're going to develop that dependency. The child will tend, I'm not going to say 100% because you can't say 100%, because this is learning, and people learn in different ways, different things can happen, but the tendency is to develop that dependency. So if everything else is equal, which it never is, when the child gets older, their personality may be more dependent. Okay? So when you leave the parents and you come to a social group with a lot of people, there's ways to be more dependent. I'm depending more on my friends. Whereas the person who has to fight that and be independent and deal with those problems when they get into another social group, when 20 years later, they may not be as dependent. They might not wait for everybody to do something at the same time. They may think differently. Any question about that? Does that make sense? Okay, man? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, this is just one of the basic logic patterns that goes through personality developmental psychology. There is a transition that the child goes through. And every time they learn something, like what the child is really learning in feeding is not how to feed, not how to eat. This is natural. This is an instinct. The baby knows how to suck, but you don't have to teach the baby how to do that. The baby will do it automatically. So that's biological and hereditary behavior. But what the baby has to do to learn, and they all have to learn this, we all have to learn it, is how to stop. How to eat rice. How to eat corn. How to eat tom yum goong. They can't do that when they're 3 months old. They got to wait until they're old. But the baby doesn't want to do that because talk, no match. Is there so the baby doesn't want to do that. So there's a crisis. It's called stage development, and we'll talk about it some more in our theories. But every baby has to learn it. You have to stop. Can't match. You can't. Anybody still go home and call man home, call home man. I'm joking. I know. Right? Okay, so this is the way it works. If you understand this little crisis about feeding, this is what the baby's going through. The baby's not happy to have to eat rice. They like to drink milk. Toilet training is a second universal. Every child in every culture, except cultures that are not developed, must learn how to use a toilet. This is health and behavior in societies that control this kind of behavior, and children learn how to use the toilet. There's cultural expectations about this. The culture lays down the rules. When do you do it? How do you learn it? Some of it can be gradual. In some cultures, you can learn this gradually over a long period of time with help from the parent to help you. And some, so you might be able to learn it in 6 months from the time a baby is maybe 1 year and 6 months old or something. They can learn this. but sometimes it may take longer. The culture will either accept the baby that takes a long time or not. So depending on what the cultural expectations, it has an effect on the baby. When a baby has a crisis about toilet training, the first thing that the baby is the crisis, the conflict is, am I going to do this or not? So it's an idea about jet phone, but baby, the first time a baby gets a chance, I'm going to decide. And this is up to the baby. Of course, the mother can punish or approve of the behavior of that mind. So now the baby's in a crisis. If some babies don't want to, so it's difficult to train some babies. So this is where the conflict comes into. The baby that doesn't want to, eventually everybody learns how to use the toilet, but sometimes it's more difficult than others. But a baby, my owl, yes. When kinio ba. Kinio ba. No, if the idea comes from my owl, then the idea, psychology in the mind later into the future says, oh, get my owl high. But the baby doesn't know. All they know is get. And we learn how to generalize these things in our life. So this is the idea of toilet training. Okay, so these are two important things. There's other ideas we're going to study more about. Puberty is a transition into adulthood where the body of the child is becoming more adult, having adult characteristics. This is either approved of a long time by modern societies like high culture, allows students to go to school, to the university. This is an elongation, a longer time for childhood, really. With your body is an adult, but you're still not in a position of being an adult in the culture. So this is new for Thailand, maybe 50 years or so. Most of the people go to university now, as I expect. And this is an elongation of your childhood. Right now, you are an adult. Technically, in your body, you are young men and women. But you still don't have to have a job. You're not married, you don't have children, responsibility to take care of. So your environment and your social life is still like a young person, a young child, really. But your bodies are adults. So there's a conflict there too. And different cultures deal with these conflicts differently. And we're going to study the theory called psychosocial development, where we're going to look at some of these types of cultural development. In America, the transition to adulthood is very short, abrupt, short. They expect people to, young children in school to develop quickly. They're continually telling kids, what are you going to do, what are you going to be. You got to decide when you're 6 years old, what do you want to be when you get older? You have to start answering those questions. And so in America, you push harder, but you still have the same idea of it takes a long time to come to a resolution. These kinds of pushing is high stress for young people, and it can cause certain types of problems. In less developed cultures, it can be slower development and less stressful. Slower development, but but then the crisis time can be cut very, very short. So we're going to study about that in a theory coming up. Okay. So here are the universals on this slide. Cultural differences, universals: feeding, toilet training, puberty, sexual control. As young people come to a point when they realize their reproductive abilities. And most cultures impose some rules about marriage and courtship. Like young girls bring their boyfriends home to meet their parents, and things like this. And so this protects the society, it protects the culture. So these rules are important for the culture. Today, we're breaking the rules, and we're not thinking about the effect that it's going to have on the next generation and the whole culture, not only in Thailand, but in every culture. And then there's a liberation and separation from parents is the last. So you have to learn these. These are going to be things you're going to have to write about. You should write them, sit down and write them, and describe each one of these things clearly before the midterm. Okay, here there's some variations across culture. They have the universal means it's in every culture. Variations means it's different according to time or intensity of the problem. We can talk about control of sexual expression. These are restrictions the culture places on sexual expression. And they're ordinarily found in all sophisticated or advanced cultures. Cultural rules define behavior between the sexes, between the male and female. This serves to restrict sex before marriage. This preserves the family, the concept of the family, the idea that the parents raise the children. All of this, the structure of family togetherness is very similar. It's not exactly the same in cultures. The basic idea of how important it is a cultural universal. Okay. There's a discussion on culture and personality on page 64. Different cultures reward the developing child differently. Rewarding the child helps to develop different traits. So you have to learn about the concept of traits. Motives. This is motivation. Different children learn different reasons. Some people are a good little boy because of some reason. Some little girl is a good little girl because of some reason. And some are not. Some break the rules because of the reason why is called a motive. Values and ways of thinking. So this all comes from your culture. Typical patterns of personality learned from the culture include, now this is the important thing, we've mentioned it already, and you can focus in on it by learning these dimensions. Independence and individuality versus dependence and collectivity. This is closeness, and more independence is living kind of alone. This doesn't mean that people in America all stay alone. They have a social group also, but the rules for interaction are very different. Number two, competition and personal achievement versus sharing and cooperation. So these are basic ideas that exist in different societies. And number three, the striving for achievement, personal improvement, versus equality of position. Okay, so you need to learn this about, on page 64, you can read about it in detail. And you ask some questions, write down some questions, and we can discuss it Friday. Social class differences is another aspect. see right here. Okay, this is the last idea. We're going a little faster than normal, and we should be going. Social class differences. People within a culture and a society are also dividing according to ethnic and social class groups. We talk about ethnic groups, what makes people different within the culture. And one of them is language, the location, in the east or the west or the south, food, types of food preparations, language. There's also, inside a culture, people are different because of their social class. And basically, this means the amount of wealth that they have within a family. The reason this affects your personality is because people who have money have access to a variety of different activities. If you don't have, if you have less money, you have less access. So some people have the ability to travel abroad, study in a school in another country, or have different types of advantages. They live in a different social group. These subgroups have a different culture, and they're different than the bigger culture in several different ways. Their philosophy of life, their system of values, and their ways of behaving become different. These different classes of groups may express different values and behaviors to their children. So through the parents who have the same social class as their children, the values of that class, of that social class, is passed on to the child. So what children believe about their culture, it really comes from their social class, their social group. You can look at, now this is not in your book, the material's in your book, but I made this chart to try to explain the differences. The material's in the book. You can read it and make this chart for yourself. I encourage you to do that. In fact, I might ask you to do that on an evaluation, evaluating your learning. Making charts like this is a study skill. When you're reading and you make a chart like this, it really helps you to remember. It gives you a better picture in your mind. So I encourage you to make it, even though you copied it from the book. I've copied it from the book too. But as I did, I put these in places where I thought they belonged, and I have my own reasons for it. But it explains exactly what the book is saying. We can look at the parent. If you go down, if you look down, you can see the parent in terms of their class level. Here's lower class and middle class. Okay? And if you look at the parent over here in terms of the style the parent uses to raise a child. And we didn't talk about this yet, but we're going to talk about it soon. The parents will usually have a different style towards relating to their children. It's not, well, it's quite different. A parent can be authoritarian, to be the authoritative, or allowing, permissive. There's three basic styles. And this will have an effect on the child. And so will the class. So when you look inside this, slide here, it's the effects that the parenting has on lower class mothers. Okay? Any questions? Oh, I heard somebody say something. Okay, so let's look at the parent, the lower class parent. If the style is permissive, which means allowing, no discipline. Then breastfeeding and toilet training is less frustrating for the child. You want to eat and hungry, you can eat now, it doesn't matter. not all parents are permissive. The effect this has on the child is it's easy. The life is easy for the child, okay? And one of the effects, as the child is going through different behaviors with different people, different situations, it has a kind of encouragement on the child being expressive. At early ages, the child becomes less inhibited, does not follow the rules, and doesn't learn rules, and may have, if they have a tendency to be aggressive, they would find aggressiveness rewarding. Okay? So this is the research. The research has found this to be true. Okay, we're going to look at it quickly, and we're going to come back and look at it again Friday. A middle-class parent, when the mother is from the middle class, which just means not rich and not poor, because I'm in the middle. If the person is restricted, which means not permissive, but controlled, breastfeeding and toilet is more frustrating for the child. It's a difficult problem for the child. They will not accept that the baby cannot use the toilet. But as the child gets older, their ability to inhibit aggression has improved. The baby learns through working out this problem, the baby learns how to control themselves. Self-control is easier for the child. They don't learn to express aggressive impulses as easily. Now this is the research. It's more complicated than this. Inside of this idea, right here, is a concept of delayed gratification and emotional intelligence are connected to these types of interactions with children. So if the child can control their behavior, control their impulses, they can be happy to behave in a more intelligent, emotionally intelligent way and wait for gratification. Wait for the reward. Ability to wait for the reward. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I think we kind of went a little fast today. I'm not sure why. But we're going to review this again, and then we'll do an exercise Friday. I'll give back your papers Friday, and I'll finish it again. Any questions? Questions? Thank you very much.